it's Dawn from Dawn's Dirt. Dirt can mean gardening, dirt can mean politics, dirt can mean religion, dirt can mean chickens, agriculture, farming, homesteading. Dirt can mean anything we want it to mean because we can just chat dirt. And so, super excited for today's guest. I have Holly, and Holly is a lupus coach. Lupus hits close to home for me because my dad had lupus. And so, yeah, so excited to have you on the show today, Holly, and thanks so much for being here.
I'm super excited to chat with you today. Thanks for having me.
So first, let's chat about lupus because that's we're going to talk about lupus and homesteading and food and nutrition and all of the things. But let's start with autoimmune disease. So can you tell us a bit about your story?
Definitely. My story started a little over 20 years ago with mono. I got hit by mono really hard in my early 20s, and it just never really went away. Like, I was out of work for a month and a half. My throat was like swollen out to my jawline. It was pretty bad, and I could do nothing but sleep. And from the point where my blood work started looking normal and everything was quote unquote fine, I still didn't feel fine. I was stuck with this fatigue that just would not let up and kept going back to the doctors. I was still getting sick really easily. And all they had to say was, well, your blood work looks normal. There's no mono still in your system that we can tell. And they finally just gave me a diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome and told me, well, it usually clears up within 2 years. And that was basically all the help that I got. So
really,
yeah.
So how did you go from that to lupus? I mean, yeah, how'd you get that diagnosis?
There were many, many, many years in between. So I was stuck in this chronic fatigue cycle for ages. And I kept trying to dabble in different things like acupuncture, energy medicine, all of which I think has great benefits. Some of which I just at the time could not afford to continue doing. Acupuncture was out of my price range at that time. And eventually I started taking classes at an herb school. So I thought, I'm going to learn how to use plants as my medicine. And that certainly helped a lot. That opened my eyes to the natural world on a different level than I had ever, interacted with it before. And to the point where my mom was freaking out because she thinks I'm going to put every weed in my mouth and kill myself by poisoning myself. But so I went down that road because I wanted to take control of my health and find ways to help myself out of this chronic fatigue cycle. So I would be fine, for a few days or a week or two. And then I would overdo myself, either try to start working out again or go out and party with friends because I was still trying to live a normal life. And then I would get knocked down again with fatigue, and I could usually make it to work, but I couldn't do much outside of the things that I had to do. And so I made some gains doing, the herbalism, really enjoyed that, ended up working at an integrative pharmacy, working with the supplements and the herb department, and helping people that way. But I still didn't see the things that I was doing helping myself the way that I believe that it should. I wasn't making enough gains based on everything that I was taught. So there was something still going on, and it had been, over 10 years at this point, right? So eventually I went, this is like 20 years, so I'm trying to condense this down into a few minutes. But at one point, we had taken a trip out to Kauai. We had some friends that had moved down there, and it was the best time. I felt so good while I was there. But at that time in my life, I was also I really had been losing hope with not being able to picture what my future is going to look like, not being able to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I was working in the restaurant industry, which I absolutely love, but I knew I didn't want to do that forever. And so we went out to Hawaii. I could ignore that for a while and just enjoy being out in the sun. As soon as we were flying home, and we live in San Diego, like I'm always happy to fly home to San Diego, but I just had this feeling of just total depression coming home because I would have to acknowledge the fact that I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And it was right after that we got home that I had an irritation on my scalp. This is probably in about 2016 or so. And I ignored it until my hair was falling out. And I ended up with quite a large bald spot on my head. Still ignored it. At the time, I was going to see a rheumatologist, doing some testing with him, finally found out that I was on the autoimmune spectrum without anything being pinpointed yet. Still was brushing off my scalp thing because I had had a bout of alopecia years back. And, we did some simple, probably steroid injections or something that I would never want to do now. Hair grew back. It was no big deal. So I was just like, I'll deal with that when the time comes. A few years after that, when I finally got around to going to a dermatologist to like take care of this little thing, she comes to do a biopsy and we find out that, oh, I have lupus.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that diagnosis would have been really tough, right? Like lupus it's not a little thing. I'll tell you quick my story. Like when my dad was diagnosed with lupus, so my dad was, I think in his early 30s when he was diagnosed with lupus. First they thought it was rheumatoid arthritis, and then that wasn't it, and they did more tests, and yeah, it was lupus. And the lupus specialist at that point said to my dad, big tough guy. My dad was 6'6", like big man, and strong personality. If you've met me, you've met my dad through me, right? He's passed away now, but yeah. And so he's this big bold man, and the doctor at that point when my dad was diagnosed said, "Well, Ted, you have lupus, and most people die within 10 years." And my dad just got angry, and so he stood up, poked this doctor in the shoulder, and said, "There's only one person going to tell me when I'm going to die, and that's not you." And he walked out, and he made it 20 years. He phoned that doctor back at 10 years and said, "I'm still kicking. I'm still alive." My dad did not let his lupus diagnosis slow him down one bit. He built the greenhouse. He got into farming, self-employment. He provided for his 6 kids. Like, it did not slow my dad down once. And so, yeah, that's my dad's story. So back to your story, you got this diagnosis. So how did that sit with you?
Funny enough, I had kind of an odd reaction, which was like, oh my God, I have lupus. I was like thrilled actually to finally have a diagnosis and to have confirmation that I'm not crazy. But also it made sense to me because my mom also has lupus, and this is something that can be passed down genetically, typically through the mothers to daughters. 9 out of 10 people that have lupus are women, and it usually affects minorities much more than somebody like me, blonde haired and white. I'm in the minority with this disease, and everybody presents differently. Everybody has a different experience. Typically when men have it, it's a lot of kidney involvement or organ involvement. It's definitely more on the severe side. Women, it can be absolutely just as severe, having all kinds of organ involvement. But there are different types, and I have discoid lupus, which affects me primarily on my skin. A lot of people will have the butterfly rash across their face, which is kind of just this bright red rash that does this kind of butterfly along the face. And I've been lucky that I haven't really had that present too badly. It's been mostly on my scalp, and I have stopped that progression. And I've been technically in remission for 3 years, I believe. So we're working on clearing the rest of it, right? So it's still in my system via blood work. and I still have some fatigue issues, but where I am now compared to where I was even 5 years ago is a whole different place. So we're just working on clearing the rest of that out.
Do you remember the toilet paper wars of 2020? Are you worried about being prepared in an emergency? Are you tired of being a slave to the corporations we purchase from? It's time to take control. Become ungovernable. Take your food system into your own hands. Hi, I'm Dawn, a coach dedicated to helping you live like grandma used to. Self-reliant, resourceful, and prepared. Whether it's raising chickens, growing a garden, canning your own food, or even milking a cow, I'll teach you how to thrive and survive in the space you have, big or small. We can even potentially make some money off your homestead. Visit Dawn's Dirt today to book your free jumpstart call. Together, as a team, we can get you self-reliant and ungovernable. We, the people, have the power to take back control. Remember, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. But if you teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Let's build a better future and a community, one skill set at a time. Okay, yeah, absolutely. So you've got your diagnosis, you work in the herbalist spectrum, you're trying to do things naturally, and then what has put you into remission?
Well, and I know this might come across interesting to your listeners and to your platform, but I actually completely changed my view on plants. And I went, I went animal-based / carnivore.
Okay, I'm totally for that. I mean, I've got shirts that say beef. I have chickens. I have absolutely. I'm not opposed to that. Even though I was the vegetable girl, I think that, I think that we as human beings need meat and we need to eat proteins, and we've been given these animals to have on our farms to butcher, and they're not like people. I'm sorry, PETA. Don't come talking. Well, come talk to me, because we'll have a fight, because, God gave us animals to raise and have good animal husbandry and to eat. So, so carnivore did it. So what did you eat? What farm to table food do you eat on carnivore?
Sure. Well, I will back up and say that I am no longer fully carnivore. I am doing a lot more vegetables now. And there were some other steps along the way too that led to remission. Carnivore was just one of the bigger ones. How did I end up doing carnivore? Actually, I think it was sort of through working with Kaylor Betts, who we both work with as our business coach. He had suggested it, but he suggested it right after it had already come into my awareness through social media. And I was like, what the heck is this all about? I am raised to believe that eating a plant-based diet is where it's at. That's where all of your nutrients come from. It is the healthiest, most alive and vibrant, sources of nutrition that you can possibly eat. It's better to eat plants than something that is dead and rotting, depending on who you're talking to, right? When it comes to meat.
We're talking about... You're talking to a farmer here. I'm a farm girl, so I am all about my meat, potatoes, and vegetables. Balanced diet from the farm to the table.
Yeah. And so that concept of balance got thrown out the window, though, when I learned about carnivore and animal-based, because when you say the word balance, typically people think that that's going to mean have, lots of greens on your plate, lots of colors, some protein, and maybe some carb and fat. That's what balance looks like in the food world. Well, when you go to the carnivore side, it's like, no, plants are trying to kill you. They've got anti-nutrients that are...
What? I've never heard this before.
Oh, yeah. You need to... Dr. Anthony Chaffee will speak to this, and several others, Paul Saladino and Dr. Ken Berry. The idea being that a plant can't run away from its predator like an animal can. So they have to be creative in how they dissuade potential predators, things that are going to eat it, from eating it. So they have these anti-nutrients that will cause reactions to that predator. So it's going to keep bugs from wanting to eat it. It's going to keep other animals from wanting to eat it, right? And I completely bought into that. Like, let's try this and see. Let's try this and see. And so I did cut out plants from my diet. I did animal-based first. Animal-based means you can technically eat some of the fruits. So things like avocados would be considered a fruit, like the savory ones, right? Squashes, olives, things like that, maybe some seasonal berries. And then you're primarily just doing fat and animal protein. I went from that. I've done some stints doing just carnivore, which is strictly animal protein. You can go all the way to the lion diet, which is just beef, salt, and water. I haven't done that, but if anybody wants to learn about that, follow Michaela Peterson. She is a huge proponent of that because it basically completely saved her life, and there's many others too that have had that experience. So I was like, I'm trying this. Let's do it. I've done the plant-based thing for a long time. My gut's a mess. Like, I'm fatigued. Like, what the heck? What do I have to lose? And I tried it, and my energy skyrocketed. My gut got way, way better. I wasn't dealing with bloating and constipation like I had before, and things really evened out. And I'd say that is one of the biggest components in me getting to remission. Again, there's some other stuff too, but that was one of the big, very, very noticeable changes that I made. And for somebody that's been chronically fatigued for, almost 20 years leading up to that point, that was huge. Like, I almost had too much energy and didn't know what to do with it, and like had to really work to calm my brain down and quiet it down so I could sleep.
Okay, that's fascinating and interesting. And, I'm not surprised. Like, I'm for agriculture, and you see what's happening in society right now. Oh, don't eat beef, and beef prices are rocketing. And, it's a bit crazy in our agricultural world right now. The grain prices, well, we've got these tariffs. I'm in Canada, right? So we got this tariff war going on. But yeah, like the grain industry right now has been kind of king for here for a few years, and the beef industry has been a bit low. The pork industry was decimated I think in the 90s. The pork farmers went sideways. The chicken farmers are doing okay here in Canada anyway. I'm not sure how they're doing in the States, but yeah, like we need those animals. Like we're raising those animals. Farmers need to do more of that. We need to save our family farms, actually, because that is the best meat, the one that's been raised on the farm. So I'm curious to know, where do you get your beef from? Because the best beef I've ever had is, well, when we had beef cows, we ate limpy and we ate lumpy because they couldn't go to the auction and they couldn't be sold on the market. So those are the ones that we were like, oh, just cut the front quarter off and we'll eat the rest. Like, so we ate our scraps. But so where do you get your beef from? Because there's a big difference between grass-fed, grain-finished, all the buzzwords and all the things. So what do you eat for beef? Where's your go-to, and what do you do? And what do you do in a pinch if you're, out of town, and what do you eat?
Definitely. There's so much nuance to that question, because I think when people first hear about the carnivore diet, their immediate response is, that's too expensive. That's for rich people, right? I can't afford that. And from all of the doctors and the researchers that I've followed on that line, they say that even if you're just doing standard grain-fed, feedlot style ground beef, you're still going to be doing better than if you weren't eating meat at all. Right? Like, you're still going to be benefiting from that. Is it the most ideal meat? No, it's not. It's going to be more inflammatory because it's going to be higher. They're grain fed. They're going to have a higher omega-6 content, which leads to more inflammation. So that's definitely something that we can talk about. But in a pinch, regular ground beef, pretty much anybody can afford that. And the other thing is that if you're doing more carnivore or animal based, you're cutting out all of the processed foods, right? So all of the stuff that's in the middle of the grocery store that's bad for us anyways, that costs a heck of a lot of money. Especially for me, I was gluten free, so I was getting all of the gluten free substitutes. That shit is expensive. Like, that's a lot of
For
money.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, and then I question all of that too. So people will go to gluten free or they'll go to dairy free or they'll go to this or that. And I'm like, what's the shit ingredients that's added to those, products that you're buying? What is the additives and preservatives and, all the different things? You talk about soy, right? Like soy's got it's genetically engineered and it's got more, I think it's estrogen. I don't remember, but it's got more estrogen
Estrogen.
than anything else. Yeah. So like, I don't know. Our food system is pretty fucked and we need to get back to basics. And I personally like green finished beef better. I think the marbling's a little different.
It's
But
delicious.
I love both, right? I just love farmers and agriculture, right? So I think that's where we need to go back to is food and from the farm food.
Yeah.
That's where it's at.
I
Farm to table and start skipping out our grocery stores. Like that the grocery stores are the problem. It's the big corporations in the grocery store between the farmer and the end product, us as consumers. It's everyone in between there. They're the problem. It's not, the farmer and it's not the consumer. It's all the bureaucracy and bullshit in between.
Yeah, I totally agree. And to continue answering your question from before, where do I source my stuff? So I still eat a very protein heavy, protein focused diet, but I am now adding as much seasonally as I can, seasonal vegetables in, and seasonal produce in general. And so honestly, what I found to be one of the financially easier on the pocket ways to get quality beef is I do a butcher box subscription. There are other subscription boxes that you can get from higher end farms, but they do cost more money. And would I love to do that? Yes, I would, but that's just not in the budget yet. So until then, Butcher Box does a good job. I understand that they source from small farms all over, I think just the US, all over the US. And I think they source some seafood and maybe some lamb from elsewhere. But I feel overall good doing that. It is affordable. And so that's where I get the majority of my beef. Do we fill in things from the grocery store sometimes? Yes. Do I also have a source where I get my local duck eggs because I'm allergic to chicken eggs? Yes. And he also has really high quality meat. So when I can afford it, I'll get some extra meat from him. And as far as produce, do I still go to the grocery store? Yes, but I don't go there often. And I recently signed up for a local CSA box or community served agriculture. I can't remember exactly what that stands for.
And you just said a buzzword that just lit my soul on fire. Community supported agriculture food box. And so, oh man, thank you. On behalf of all farmers everywhere, thank you so much for supporting community supported agriculture. Like that is the way to go. And so that farmer, it's a partnership between you and that farmer. You are buying their produce, maybe you paid ahead. I'm not sure the deals. Sometimes you pay ahead on it. Sometimes you don't, but that is a relationship. And I think that produce is going to be the best produce that you will ever ingest in your body. It's going to be nothing like the grocery store. And it's more about relationship and community supported agriculture, right? And so, yeah, on behalf of all farmers everywhere, thank you. Thank you for supporting local farmers. Like I used to say that to all my customers. Thank you so much for supporting my farm. I said it to every freaking customer. Thank you so much for supporting my farm. It came out so naturally. But I meant it every single time from the bottom of my heart, because without customers and without farms, we don't have a food system. Like the grocery stores think they're the food system, but they sure are not. Yeah. So You just
Totally.
made my day.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm really happy to do it. I know some of the people that work for the farms. This is basically like a food hub. So they are sourcing from some of the different local farms, but all within San Diego County where I live. And I love that because several years ago, I was part of another CSA box delivery system. They would deliver to my doorstep, which was convenient, but I thought I was getting local produce, but it turns out they were sourcing from all the way up to Washington, and we're here in San Diego, and it's still better than the standard grocery store 100%, so it wasn't like it was a bad thing, but it's actually really important, like you said, to do as local as possible for multiple reasons. One, you're serving your local economy, right? And supporting the local infrastructure with that system. But also, and this is going to get into like circadian biology, where we're supporting our natural body clock to so that our body understands where we are located on the earth, what time of day it is, what time of year it is. When we eat locally grown produce, this doesn't so much correspond with meat, but with locally grown produce, that produce is being grown under the same sky, the same hours that we are used to living in. Not really, I feel like I'm not explaining that correctly, but it orients, yeah, so you're getting the same light codes from your produce as you should be from where you are living in the world. So if I'm here in San Diego, but I'm eating something that was grown, I don't know, across the country up in the northern states, that doesn't make sense. It's going to confuse my body on a cellular level because it's like, wait a minute, I'm eating I don't know, what do you grow up? What do they grow up there? Corn or something from one of the northern states, and I'm eating it here in San Diego, and it's like, well, they're in a totally different climate and sun range than I am here. So my cells are going to be like, well, wait, am I in San Diego or am I like, 10 states away? Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, it absolutely does. I mean, so I live in Canada, right? So in Canada, we have a short, and I'm in Alberta. So Ontario has a little different growing season, and BC lower, BC has a different growing season. But I'm in Alberta. We have June, July, August, and sometimes it depends on frost in September. We have a very, very short season, and our bodies here in Canada, we naturally want the salads and the tomatoes and the fresh, lighter stuff in the summertime. And then in the wintertime, our bodies actually crave the stews and the potatoes and the squashes and the soups and the, things like that. And that's how we're designed. But the problem with our global food system, and this, I'm not for globalism, right now I'm not. So the problem with our current food system is we kind of have this expectation here in Canada that we can get asparagus all different times of the year. And that's not like, no, that's not what our bodies need. And it kind of will throw ourselves off. And so avocados here in Canada should be a treat. Strawberries, except in the summer months, should be a treat. Corn should be ate only in the fall where we are. We shouldn't be eating corn now. Yeah, we can bring corn in from, Mexico and Florida and Southern California and things like that now. But that's not what our bodies want. Our bodies want right now, we're just coming into asparagus season, right? So eat your fill of asparagus now, get sick of it, and don't eat asparagus then until the next year. And so that's what real seasonal eating is going by what is grown around you. And here in Canada, we can have our storage items for the winter, the potatoes, carrots, onions, beets, squash, things like that, and then add it to our beef and our chicken and our pork and our lamb and our proteins, right? That's how they ate 100 years ago, and I think that's where we need to get our food system back to, right? So it makes total sense what you're saying. And again, in San Diego, you'd have a little different growing climate, but yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, we're lucky. We have year-round farming here. we can grow produce year round, but it's still seasonal. There are still things. We're not going to be getting broccoli in the middle of summer. We're not going to be getting light leafy greens in the middle of winter. So, tomatoes, yes, we have a much wider season where the tomatoes are fantastic, but they're not year round. So shopping at your local farmer's market, again, is also so important, because that's where you're getting what is growing seasonally. And I think I've told you this before, but the last 10 years that I was in the restaurant industry, I worked with a chef who was hyper local, farm to table. So fully supportive of all the local farms. And I still do some events with her. And this coming Saturday, right after this recording, we're doing a huge farm dinner. I think it's going to be like 200 people, and it's to support that farm, to bring money to the farm. And we're using all the produce that they are growing there. We even met the local beef, the local cow that is being harvested for this dinner. So it's supporting multiple different farms at this one beautiful event. And I just know you would appreciate that. So I wanted to share.
Absolutely. I'm the farmer, because again, I'm a farm girl. It even says it on my hat: no farmers, no food. Like, I am pro agriculture, big, small, upside down, sideways. I love agriculture. I am more proponent to the small farm, because that's what I was, and that's where my heart is. But I would never downfall a large farm. But when I would go to a restaurant, like you were saying, and they said market greens or farm to table greens, I'd be like, what is the farm name? What's his name? What's the person's name or her name, or what's their name? Who grew this, and where did they grow it? And, why did they grow it, and what did they use on it? And, I was like that. I went to a restaurant and it said something about eggs, fresh farm, fresh eggs. And I'm like, something's not jiving here. Like in Canada, there's bureaucracy, and you're not actually allowed to take uninspected farm eggs and use them in a restaurant. Just because of craziness. We're also not allowed to drink raw milk, which is insanity. But yeah, so I'd be the one asking the questions. Who is the farmer? It was so important to me to know who the farmer was. And when I had my farm too, some people put my name on their restaurant menus, and when I was out of season, I got a little frustrated, because I'm like, I don't want your customers thinking that that's what my tomato is, because they'd switch to a grocery store or off the truck kind of tomato, and I'm like, that's not my tomato. My tomatoes taste good, not like that cardboard shit that you're putting in your salad now, because I'm out. I'm sorry. And it's seasonal, it's agriculture, it's farming. Like, shit happens in farming. So yeah, love that, that you're supporting the farmer, and you're bringing people out, connecting the farmer to to people, and eating. That's relationship. It always comes back to relationship for me.
Yeah, and it's community too, right? It's having these dinners over this food, people that are appreciating the experience of it. It brings people together, and that takes healing and health to a whole different level, right? When we can bond over these things and experience this together, like the tastes and the textures and the flavors, and learn about the health aspects of it together as a community, then we're just enriching our lives in a whole different way.
For sure. I mean, again, let's look back 100 years. What did they do in society? What did they do in communities? They had community potlucks. Everyone brought their food to the table, and they did a barn raising, or I think the Amish still do that. Everyone brings something, everyone works together. You have communication, actual face-to-face, touch, in-person communication, not just over a freaking phone or online or whatever. And yeah, you bonded over building a barn and eating food together, and you bartered and you traded and you worked together as a team. And that's the problem, I think, with society right now, is we've got this cold system where the farmer is so far removed from the people, and the people go to a grocery store, children go to a grocery store and think that that's where carrots or beef comes from. And they're just that chasm between the two is so far and so wide. And I don't think it's healthy on any level for us. So yeah, it's we're getting back to it though. This whole division and whatever and governments, and we live in Canada. Canada's a little against Trump right now. I don't even know where I fall. Well, I do know where I fall. I don't like Trump. I don't like Carney, who just got elected. I don't like Putin. I don't like Zelensky. I don't like any of them. So, like, I don't trust any of them. They're not parts of my world. My world is my people and my community around me. And so that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on how I can make my community and my people and my world bigger and better. And that's where I'm at. And it starts with food.
I couldn't agree more. Like, I think it doesn't matter. It matters, but it doesn't really matter what's going on a big scale. That might sound ignorant. I don't mean it in an ignorant way. What matters is starting at the root level, right? So starting like way back when I started my personal growth journey, it was because I recognized that this big movement that was happening at the time that I was marching for, I knew that was all going to fade in a matter of a week or two, and everybody was going to go back to their own daily lives and forget all about it, and nothing was going to change, right? So I had to start change within me if I wanted to affect anything outside of me. And so starting with that, it slowly has a ripple effect to my family unit, to my, community at large, to my workplace. And, it grows from there. And that's how we change things from the bottom up. The top down is great when it works, but the chances of it working in the way that we want it to, at least, is pretty slim to none at this point. So like strengthen ourselves, up level our own health and well-being and mental health. That spills out to the rest. We teach our kids to, think better, to take care of themselves better. They're stronger. They can think and function better. And that is our future generations, right, that are going to lead the country. So if we can instill health and wellness and clear mind really with them, and that starts again on that root level of what are we consuming? What are we putting in our bodies? What are we taking in through our eyes and our ears and our mind? And, how do we take care of ourselves on that root level so that we can grow up strong and actually make a difference in the world?
For sure. I couldn't say that better. I actually got goosebumps when you were just talking, because it's the truth. We can only control what we can control. I can't control any of the top guys. Like, power and money corrupt. And so again, and I can sit here and worry about that, but what's that going to do to me and my health, right? Like, I'm just going to ignore that and work within the system the best I can and kind of just, do my own thing. And you're right, build communities and build with people. First my daughters, and I'm going away this weekend to Kaylor's retreat, and my daughters are going to look after my chickens, right? Like it's a family affair. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, if they make a mistake or they make this, and I was going to tell them, I'm going to be like, well, girls, if something happens to those chickens, we're out 30 grand, and so I think I'm going to pose it to them like, it's doing chores as a farm kid is not the same as doing chores as a city kid. I heard that whole thing where you roll out the garbage can, and I'm betting my family, and I'm not even a farm anymore, right? I'm just doing 150 laying hens and 600 meat birds or 700 meat birds this year, so it's just small scale. But
I'm just doing 700 meat birds. No biggie.
Well, I'm down. I'm down. I've actually not done this many meat birds before. I've done a couple hundred at a time. I've not done this small of meat birds before. I'm doing them in batches, so it'll be okay. But as far as the chickens go, like my laying hens, 150 is not that many. I had 299 at one point when I had my large farm, and that was even just a small portion of what I did on the farm. I had, thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of vegetables. So. Do you eat eggs? That's a question. Do you eat eggs?
I am allergic to chicken eggs. So I eat duck eggs, okay. Or I can eat any other kind of eggs. I can't eat chicken eggs. And I've tried to retest that, and it's still a very hard no.
Okay, interesting. But if you weren't allergic to eggs, you would eat,
Oh
or
yeah.
chicken eggs, you would eat chicken
Oh
eggs.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Big
So
fan.
I'll tell you my duck egg story. I get a little weird with food sometimes. So I had a customer, love this customer. Haven't seen her in years, but she was like, duck eggs, this is where it's at, Dawn. You have to here. And she took one of her duck eggs out and gave it to me. And it was like this prize. And I was like, thank you so much. And I brought that duck egg home. And for me, I don't know. Just mind over matter. I cooked that duck egg up and I couldn't do it. And so I fed it to my small children. I had toddlers at that point. And so I was like, here, girls, here's some duck egg for you because mama can't do it. And it was just, it looked like a chicken egg. Like it was fine. It was bigger, but like it looked fine. It would have tasted fine, but yeah, sometimes my mind does
That's so
things
funny.
to
I
me.
At one of the restaurants that I used to work at, we do brunch on Sundays, and we had one dish that had a fried duck egg on top. And we had this one customer, and she would just get so like offended that we even had that on the menu. And she'd be like, I want that, but I want a chicken egg. I don't want a duck egg. Like, just so rude about it. I was like, it's an egg. Like, it's even bigger and more luscious and rich and beautiful than a chicken egg. What's your problem? But yeah, sometimes our brains just get in the way. And I will
Yeah.
always,
Well,
always understand and respect anything that's a texture issue. If somebody's like, I can't do the texture on something, I'm like, okay, I have respect for that.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And it's for me, it's just mind over matter. If I was starving, I'm sure I could eat a duck egg. And I get that. Hey, maybe one day I'll even get into ducks. Who knows? But I couldn't do it at that point. And yeah, but I would never go to a restaurant and say, why are you even serving this? Like that's pretty entitled. Like,
Right.
yeah, entitlement bugs me. The texture thing, though, that brings me to tomatoes. When I had my farm, people would say, "Oh, I don't like tomatoes," and I'm like, "But you've never really had one of my tomatoes before." And the first thing I would say is, "It taste or is it texture?" Because if it's texture, I can't help you, but if it's taste, I can help you. And so customers would reluctantly try a tomato, and then they're like, a lot of times they're like, "Ooh, ooh, yeah, I actually like tomatoes," and I'm like, "Yeah, because." This is a real tomato as opposed to, the fake shit that you're not fake. They're not fake. They're just bred differently. They're bred for sitting on a truck and sitting in a warehouse and sitting in a grocery store. They're bred to have shelf life, not flavor. Whereas mine were bred to have flavor and not necessarily the great shelf life. But yeah,
Right. Right.
texture. Yeah.
And I think,
Yeah.
one complaint that I hear sometimes from people is like when they're talking about getting grocery store produce versus farm produce, there's like a weird complaint that the farm produce is too fresh. It's like too fresh. It doesn't last long enough. I know that sounds super weird, but I think they're used to things being able to sit in the fridge or sit on the counter for, a couple weeks before it goes bad. I think that's what they meant. But I remember
Yeah.
even once with my mom, we were traveling from we were visiting family. We were going from one side of Pennsylvania to the other, and we found this cool little like farm stand cafe that actually grew a lot of their own produce. And it was the summer, so we had a beautiful, like, just kind of leafy green salad with probably some cherry tomatoes, or I don't know what was in it. And she didn't like it. And I was like, what's wrong with your salad? And she literally said, I don't know, it's just too fresh. And I was just like, what are you talking about? But, when you're used to
That's when you're
the
used to
stuff
it.
from the store.
Yeah. Well, and that comes to all the food. I mean, when you eat from the center aisles of a grocery store, that shit tastes good to some people. It doesn't taste good to me. I do indulge in the odd bag of chips here and there, but I don't very much, like I like fresh, good farm to table, a home cooked meal. Man, when I was doing my farmers markets, I was working, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. So sometimes I would sacrifice meals at my table to put food on other people's tables. And a treat to me was to eat a good home cooked meal from my mama, or, like, or even, something I had time to cook myself, but I was working so much that I just didn't have the time. And so that's probably part of what's going on in society too, is we're having to work 2 and 3 and 4 jobs, just to make ends meet. And who has time to do that farm to table, home to table cooking, right? And so, but there again, if you grow it in your backyard, it's easy to just grab it, and it's the best stuff. So
That's true. And let's talk about that kind of food prep for a minute, because that was always something that was challenging for me. I didn't, I guess I don't know if I wasn't raised. I mean, my mom home cooked for us pretty much my whole childhood, but I never really learned how to do that for myself. So going into college, it was like, well, this thing from a box has instructions, so I'll just pour that in and do the thing, and, that's my meal. And that's just how I learned to cook for myself. As I've gone through this whole shift in, process from eating like that to slowly going more plant-based, I never figured out still how to prep so that I was like prepared to just be able to throw together something healthy. And COVID honestly was what got us to stop eating out all the time, because we ran out of time and we were starving and we didn't have anything out of the freezer or whatnot. So we just go get some easy fast food. And also going carnivore for me simplified everything, because I'm a foodie at heart. I want historically 5 different tastes and textures. Like I want at least 3 vegetables, maybe a green or something with texture, whatever meat, sauces, like I want it all. And so if I didn't have that, I was like unhappy and feeling like let down by my meal. So going carnivore, I had to learn how to like just cook meat. But then I also was like happy with just having a piece of meat or like a half a chicken or something on my plate for dinner. And that kind of trained me out of this whole like food needs to be complicated idea. And as I've slowly added, some vegetables and stuff back in, I've learned how to take the complication out of things. So preparing things in bulk so you can have a few meals at a time before you have to do your next food prep, making things easy versus complicating things. It's a process to learn how to do, but if you're eating whole foods, it's not that hard. It really doesn't have to be that hard.
No, you're absolutely right. So when I had I call it my empire. When I had my empire, I had my farm to table vegetables, I had eggs and all the things, but I actually owned 2 little grocery stores, farm to table grocery stores as well during that time. 2020 was my best year ever, because people were cooking at home. And I can remember one of my favorite meals, it was I would go get some steaks from my store, because I didn't have the beef myself anymore. So I would go get some steaks from my store. I would bring them home, throw them on the barbecue, throw some corn in, or, asparagus or whatever was the vegetable at that point, and cook it all up. And I would just have steak and vegetable. We didn't even have potatoes sometimes, it was just steak and vegetable. And it was so simple and so quick and so easy. So that was one of my go-to meals when I was home. And it still is one of my favorite things to do, is just have meat and vegetables. My kids were little, and one of their favorite vegetables to eat was zucchinis fried with some onions, and then a piece of meat on the side. And it was a full meal deal for us. Like some salt and pepper, butter, like
that's all you
need. It was just so simple. And, potatoes are nice too. My mom when I was growing up, I got a little story from when I was growing up. When I was growing up, my parents, we were farming, right? We had the greenhouse, and my parents were working crazy hours as well. And, I can remember on Friday nights, we would go to town, and my dad had a job in the city to offset his farming habit, right? Because that's what farmers do. They work off farm to to provide for the farm so that all their money can just go into farming. But so we would meet my dad in town and on Friday nights, and our Friday nights were special because we went for groceries and we went to McDonald's as a treat. And so if we behaved in the grocery store, then we'd go to McDonald's. But if we weren't behaving in the grocery store, my mom would say, "Do you want me to go home and peel potatoes?" And so she used it as a threat, that we weren't going to go to McDonald's, which was a treat. And yeah, that's how I grew up. And so now, I mean, if you were going to threaten me, should I go home and peel potatoes? I'd be like, absolutely. Where's your house? And I'm coming over. Like, yeah, I went to my mom's house for a home cooked meal last night. It was sweet. It was great. It's a treat. That's where it's at, is that home cooked meal.
I agree. And I think that's something that, with both parents needing to work these days, it's a lot harder to accomplish. And I think our younger generations are missing out on some of that. And that's probably also contributing to childhood obesity and diabetes and things like that, because we are going to those quick fixes simply because we feel like that's a necessity. That's how we have to do it to get through every day. But like you said, just throw something on a grill. That doesn't take very long. An Instapot is like the most glorious thing I've ever met. It makes meat preparation so much easier. And you can do like a ton of it at once. So, making soup stock, super easy. That way you can just pull that out, use that soup stock, your bone broth for, if you're eating rice, you can use that in the rice and just make that so much more nutritious, or, sip on that in the morning, or use it in whatever soup, all your leftover veggies and meat, throw that into the soup stock, and there you've got another meal. We can just do these little things and make little investments in things like an Instapot or a nice grill. And from there on out, it just simplifies everything. So I always say, like, being healthy is really simple, but it's not easy. We have to learn the steps to simplifying everything.
Yeah, no, 100% correct. And leftover, my ex-mother-in-law, she did something called fridge fallout soup. And so she would once a week go through the fridge, take all the leftovers, throw it in a pot and call it soup. And again, my ex-husband was raised on a dairy farm. They had their meat, they had their vegetables from the garden, they had fruit trees in their backyard. Like they did farm to table. And so fridge fallout soup was once a week, probably a Sunday meal, quick and easy. Throw it in a pot, add some water, and call it good. Yeah, we need to get back to that. Maybe not quite fridge fallout soup, but farm to table. So, any last thoughts? We're just going to finish up here, but any last thoughts on autoimmune diseases and food and nature and health and the relationship between all of it? Any last words of wisdom from you today?
Definitely. When it comes to, nutrition is a huge part of autoimmune, and there's so many opinions out there on how you should be eating when you have an autoimmune condition. I would say, if something's calling to you, a specific diet is calling to you, try it. What do you have to lose, But starting with an elimination diet can be very helpful, because you can take things out and then slowly add things back in to see what might be triggering a flare-up or triggering inflammation. I see carnivore as an elimination diet. It doesn't have to be a forever lifestyle thing, but you can use that to eliminate the plants and slowly add things back in one by one to see if some of those plants are actually triggering you or not. Also with lupus specifically, a lot of people will say, and a lot of research will say, don't do red meat. Basically, it's the devil for you. I find that to be completely the opposite of the truth for me. And I know others with lupus who have also been healing themselves, healing their kidneys, especially people with lupus nephritis, who have been actually healing their kidneys and their pathways like that with doing carnivore, which goes completely against the mainstream narrative. So I just invite anyone listening that's in the situation to have an open mind about it. And if you've been trying eating one way for a long time and you're not finding the gains that you think you should be, like I was doing like tons of herbal, shoving as many plants in my face as I could for medicine on any given day, maybe let's take a step back, open our mind, and rethink it just a little bit. But ultimately, getting back to whole foods, whatever that looks like for you, is I think the most important. Cutting out seed oils, cutting out sugar. Doesn't mean you can't have a treat every once in a while. I'm not, but for a time, you might have to cut it all out just to really see how it affects you when you add it back in. So that's where I like to start with my clients that I work with, is just let's cut out the middle of the grocery store. Let's focus on whole foods. Make sure you're getting good animal protein in and good healthy fats, and we'll go from there. So.
Okay. I love it. And yeah, so that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to your coaching program. So you coach people with lupus, specifically. Had my dad been alive, still, he passed away 16 years ago, but I'd have sent him your way for sure. His lupus went in and out of remission a few times, but yeah, his mindset had a lot to do with that. But yeah, amazing. So you work with people with lupus. And so where can people find you?
Sure. On Instagram is where I hang out the most. So it's I am Holly Beck, just like the surfer. If any of you follow surfing, I've had several people lately say, I looked you up and all I see are surfing stuff. So it's I am Holly Beck. That will take you to me, not the surfer. She's amazing too, though, so give her a follow if you want. But that's where I hang out on Instagram. You can message me there. I have some links in my bio to find out more about my coaching and things like that. And then I also have a podcast, which you've been a guest on, called the Health Bridge Podcast, and that's on YouTube and all of the other streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple and iHeartRadio, all the other things.
I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. So thanks so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate you being here. Thanks for chatting farming and food and agriculture and homesteading and, all the things, and health. That's where it starts. Our food is, our basic health. It's one of our basic human needs. And so, yeah, it's so important as to what we're putting into our bodies to fuel our bodies for, our life. So thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, Dawn.